Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation on addressing mass incarceration in the United States. An overview of the mass incarceration includes the U.S. has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. Mass incarceration disproportionately impacts minority community. Also, currently, bail policies are a major cause of mass incarceration. Mandatory minimum sentences are laws that require a minimum or fixed amount of prison time for certain crimes. And lastly, three-strike laws are laws that require a longer sentence if an individual has been convicted of a felony 3 times. In the second slide, we're going to review the following, which is exploring current policies, strategies to reduce mass incarceration, recommendations for policymakers and criminal justice agents. Importance of mass incarceration policy helps in reducing the number of incarcerated people while waiting for court proceedings. And 3 advantages of mass incarceration policy: reducing prison overcrowding, decreasing crime rates, and saving taxpayer money. Basically, the concept of mass incarceration is a significant problem in the United States with a far-reaching implication for society. This presentation will explore some of the strategies and policies that can be implemented to address the issue. Some ways of addressing mass incarceration include implementing policies that reduce mandatory minimum sentences, 3-strike laws, and harsh sentencing policy. It is essential to address mass incarceration because it not only affects the individuals incarcerated, but also their family, communities, and society as a whole. In this following slide, we're going to know a little bit more about overview of mass incarceration. The U.S. has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. Mass incarceration disproportionately impacts minority community. Currently, bail policies are a major cause of mass incarceration. Mass incarceration is a major problem in the U.S. Bail policies are a major cause of mass incarceration. Harsh sentencing policies are laws that require an individual to serve a longer sentence for certain crimes, and these laws have been criticized for being too harsh and for leading mass incarceration. So the importance of mass incarceration is that mass incarceration has a significant impact on individuals, families, and communities. It contributes to a cycle of poverty and incarceration as individuals with criminal records have difficulty finding employment, housing, or further their education. It also has a significant economic cost for taxpayers and the criminal justice system. And lastly, addressing mass incarceration is critical to creating a more equitable and just society. Okay, so following mandatory minimum sentences. Mandatory minimum sentences are laws that require a minimum or fixed amount of prison time for certain crimes. These laws have been criticized for being too harsh and for leading to mass incarceration. Research suggests that mandatory minimum sentences can lead to a decrease in crime. And 5 ways of using alternatives and incarceration include drug courts, mental health courts, community supervision, electronic monitoring, and halfway houses. Mandatory minimum sentences have contributed significantly to mass incarceration. Strategies to reduce mandatory minimum sentences include reforming mandatory minimum laws, creating more judicial discretion, and reducing sentence length. Harsh mandatory sentencing policies can lead to excessive punishment and long-term consequences, such as difficulty finding employment. And true advantages of using alternatives to incarceration for those struggling with addiction or mental illness includes addressing underlying issues and reducing the likelihood of reoffending. And here we are going to read a little bit more on three-strike laws. Three-strike laws are laws that require a longer sentence and if individual has been convicted of a felony 3 times. These laws have been criticized for being too harsh and for leading to mass incarceration. Research suggests what three-strike laws can lead to a decrease in crime. Three-strike laws can lead to a decrease in crime by incapacitating repeat offenders, deterring individuals from committing crimes, and reducing plea bargaining. Three-strike laws have contributed to mass incarceration by imposing longer sentences for non-violent offenses. Strategies to reduce three-strike law include limiting the scope of laws, creating more judicial discretion, and expanding diversion programs. Here we have harsh sentencing policies. Harsh sentencing policies are laws that require an individual to serve a longer sentence for certain crimes. These laws have been criticized for being too harsh and for leading to mass incarceration. Research suggests that harsh sentencing policies can lead to a decrease in crime. So harsh sentencing policy suggests as mandatory minimum, and the three-strike laws have contributed to mass incarceration. Harsh sentencing policies can also have advantages, such as deterring crime and ensuring justice is served for victims. Other include 6 advantages of harsh sentencing policies include reducing crime rates, deterring repeat offenders, providing justice for victims, protecting society, ensuring fairness, and maintaining law and order. In our next slide, we have strategies to reduce mass incarceration. Alternatives to incarceration, diverting individuals from prison, decriminalizing certain offenses such as drug possession can help reduce mass incarceration. Reforming bail policies and investing in community-based alternatives to incarceration can also help reduce the number of individuals in prison. Decriminalizing certain offenses can reduce prison populations and free up resources to focus on more serious offenses. So exploring strategies to reduce mass incarceration, examining the various alternatives to incarceration, such as bail reform, diversion programs, and decriminalization. And lastly, analyzing the effectiveness of these strategies and how they contribute to reducing mass incarceration. And we are here at our conclusion. Mass incarceration is a major problem in the U.S. Policies such as mandatory minimum, three-strike laws, and harsh sentencing policies have contributed to the problem. These are strategies that can be implemented to reduce mass incarceration. And mass incarceration is a significant problem in the United States. Policies such as mandatory minimums, three-strike laws, and harsh sentencing policies have contributed to the problem. In addition, the overuse of incarceration, particularly pretrial detention, has led to an overcrowding crisis in jails and prison, with severe implications for public health safety. For me, it is essential to address the problem of mass incarceration by implementing strategies that have been proven to be effective. For example, reforming bail policies can reduce the number of people incarcerated while awaiting trial. In addition, decriminalizing certain offenses can reduce the number of people in prison for low-level, non-violent crimes. And now we're here at the recommendation for policymakers and criminal justice agents, reforming bail policies, providing alternatives to incarceration, diversion programs for individuals who have committed minor offenses, decriminalizing certain offenses, increasing resources for mental health and addiction treatment, addressing racial disparities in the criminal justice system, improving access to education and employment opportunities, increasing public awareness on the issue of mass incarceration. To address the problem of mass incarceration, policymakers and criminal justice agents should consider implementing the following recommendations. Reduce the use of mandatory minimum sentences. And basically, this can be done by giving judges more discretion in sentencing and reducing the number of crimes that carry mandatory minimums. Also, repeal 3 strict laws. These laws have led to excessively long and have contributed to the over-incarceration of the nonviolent offenders. Also, re-evaluate harsh sentencing policies, because research suggests that harsh sentencing policies can lead to a decrease in crime. Still, policymakers should consider whether the benefit of such policy outweighs the cost, and implement alternatives to incarceration. Programs such as drug courts, mental health courts, and community supervision can reduce the number of people in prison.